I can pretty much use a 3-inch needle on, on a bigger person, I would use a 4-inch needle. I usually use a 4-inch, so. And this hair here, we're gonna just cut your hair, you don't mind. I'm kidding. So, we get, it's not one of my skills.
That's why she's straight.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, that's good, thank you. All right, so we don't have to cut it out. So we'll come in here and we find our gallbladder 20, right? So what we need to do here is we need to find, and we'd actually have her a little bit lower. This is a little bit tight in here, we'll try it anyway. We find C2, we find the occiput, and then we want to go between those two, right? Does that make sense? And what's between C2 and the occiput?
The whole of C11.
Yeah, C1, right? These guys are getting really smart. So we're going to go here, and we'll do this, and then we'll get our 3-inch needle. Now, 3-inch needle has to be a certain thickness, right? Because otherwise, it's just not good, right? So we're going to go here, we're going to get our 3-inch needle, which is 0.35, which is good. And we'll just get one, and I'm going to sit. So the way you do this is you're going to sit down. So I would kind of break that and come over. Just like, oh, what if it doesn't go well? See, I opened the package on the wrong end. So, you feel better now, Mel?
Yeah. A lot of compliment.
I don't get nervous because it ever went wrong. I'm just a nervous person. Okay. So I take off my glasses, and then
Close my eyes.
so we're going to come in here, and here's her gallbladder 20, right? It's right in that area. So I can do this sitting down, or another way to do it is just to get right down on this level, and then I find my C2, and I find my occiput, and then I can aim right at it, okay? So I'm gonna do that. So if I get a good start to it, I'm gonna try to avoid her pimple. I'm gonna get a start to it right about in here. Then I want to get very horizontal with it, okay? So I'm gonna go right in here. I'm gonna be very horizontal with my needle, okay? So if you're doing this and you're standing up and doing it behind your back, or it's just not good, you know? You're not going to do this every day anyway. I'm going to try and go in without the gauze here and see how that goes. You may need to use gauze. And here you can, at the first part, you can kind of change your direction a little bit. And it's not going in quite yet. Once you get a certain depth, then it'll kind of take on a life of its own. So the best thing is to remember the theory of relativity. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? So if you're needling and you stop all the time, then you have to overcome inertia. But if I needle like this and I just keep it going really slowly, then I don't have to overcome inertia in order to get through. Now if I hit something, then I have to recalibrate. But if I start out with a good angle, then I should be able to get between C2 and the occiput. If I don't, by the time I get to the midline, it's kind of too late to reorient my needle, right? And if I take it out and in and out and everything, it's too much, right? So I would just, if I was doing a demo, I'd take it out and do it over. But if I was just needling a patient, I would just stop and just do one from the other side, right? Because I'm really just trying to free up this musculature in this area. That's all I'm trying to do. Okay, so I'm just going to go through here. And then at a certain point, I can just stop and see, okay, I'm angled up a little bit. That's okay. I just don't want to be angled this way too much or off that. I can be up a little bit. And I put a finger on the other side so that I can see it. 3 inches may not quite get all the way through her neck, but I'm definitely past the midline at this point. All right, now I can feel it on the other side. Okay, so I can feel the needle right here. So I've gotten through her neck, and then we'll just take a look at that. So the tube, so I'm through the midline, but I'm not totally through her neck. So I could use a 4-inch needle on her, but it's so much easier to use a 3-inch, and she's a smaller person. So that's what this looks like. Everybody understand that? So on someone with a bigger neck, you definitely want to use a 4-inch needle. So, but just getting past midline. Now I could also, on this one, come from the other side and do another one, If I went all the way past the midline, maybe to here on this one, I might use a shorter needle on the other side, you know. Or I could just go just past the midline here and just past the midline there. You know, you can play around with it. You know.
It definitely feels stronger on the side you entered.
Yeah. That's generally the case, right? Because I've gone through that tissue. This tissue I just got into, and I didn't get all that influence. That make sense? Okay. So feel free to try that. So we're putting a needle right through here, right? This is all muscle. Now there's some nerves and there's blood vessels and so forth in here too. So that's why you go really, really slow. And you also want to always use a needle that's a little bit dull for any kind of long needle insertion. And why is that? So don't use a
Not
MAC needle.
Yes.
Sorry?
When they are not sharp, they are not punctured.
They're not going to puncture. If you have a really dull needle, which these are, then as you go in, if it runs into something, it'll tend to kind of glide around it or push it out of the way. If you have a needle like a MAC needle that are super long and sharp, when that thing gets to a blood vessel, it'll go right through it. So I never use MAC needles anyway, but I would never use them for anything that's really deep in the body where there's blood vessels around. So on this one, you don't want to scrape the head too much, because that's where the suboccipital nerves and stuff like that are. Other than that, if you go right through this space and you're kind of midway between these two, you should be okay. There's a really, really thick muscle in here. You know, you don't want to obviously be too anterior, but this muscle here is thicker than you think. So if you start at gallbladder 20, you'll be okay.